Hey, it's your financial maven, Samantha Mittman-Besnoff, CPA. And for the last 30 years, yes, 30 years in the accounting world, I absolutely love sharing my insights and passion about money for individuals, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. Knowing your money and hopefully feeling less stressed about your money is what I call being financially empowered. Welcome to the Your Financial Maven podcast. Okay, so I'm excited today because the guest I have on, Julia Carlson, has spent the last 25 years as a seasoned financial leader. You're a visionary founder and CEO of Financial Freedom Wealth Management Group. You're renowned for your holistic approach to wealth management, which I absolutely love. You recently authored a book called Money Loves You, which we'll definitely be chatting about. And of course, you absolutely love financial literacy, getting it out there, having innovative ways to contribute to getting people to understand their journey to financial freedom. So, Julia, welcome to Your Financial Maven.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our
Absolutely.
conversation.
I am too. I am too. So, before we really get started into the conversation, because I want to delve into your new book that you authored and some other areas, what is money?
What is money? Ooh, what came to mind was energy. Money is
Ooh,
energy. Money is a
okay.
resource.
I love that. I actually haven't heard it be used as energy resource. Yes, but I think that's great. I think that's absolutely great. And I think you're right. I think there's the energy around money. And I think it lends itself to your book called Money Loves You. I've had a couple of other guests on talking about dating your money, loving your money, so that you feel less stressed about when you're dealing with things. You know, we're going through a lot of stressful times. And financially, I think for people, that's where it's like, oh my goodness, money this, money that. But I think if they take an approach where they take hopefully the stress out of it, a holistic approach that helps. So I'd love to know kind of how you got started with what you're doing and then how it kind of led to you to write your book.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've only ever been in the money business, so that's pretty
Same
cool.
here. Yeah, same here. Same here.
Yeah. So, I had some really wonderful teachers in high school that got me excited about like creating a mock stock
Yeah,
portfolio and business classes that just really inspired me.
I
And
love
then
it.
I remember sitting on my grandpa's lap looking at the TV and the little ticker on Bloomberg would be going by. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, what is that?
Right, right.
And then thankfully I realized how unique it is now, but my parents had a really healthy relationship with money. They
That's
talked to
good.
us about money.
That's
They
good
helped
to
me
know.
set up my Roth IRA when I was 18.
Oh, I
So
love it.
yeah, so I just I it's just has been always natural to me. It's come natural. I've been fascinated by money and got into the banking when I was 19.
I love that, and not everybody will say that they are passionate about money or numbers, and that we're few and far between, I think, in that regards, because I just have such a passion, for that and also helping others. So, getting into banking at such a young age and of course seeing a lot of change, especially since 9/11, in 2001, just how the
Absolutely.
banking industry, I think, has shifted and changed since then. But I think just in general, how we deal with our wealth and what we do with. So what kind of, you know, creating your own business and then kind of taking that to the next step?
Yeah. So when it was in the late 90s when I started working at the bank, and then I got my licenses for
Nice.
securities and
Yep.
investment management. And then, gosh, I thought, I'm ready to be a financial advisor. Like, I want to help people. And
Yeah.
I remember going to the bank, the manager, and saying, I am ready. Let me be an advisor. And they said, well, as soon as your boss, essentially the advisor,
Wow.
retires, you can have that position. So
I
here
mean,
I
that
was,
could have been
really.
what, 20, 30 years? Like,
Exactly,
right.
exactly. And so at 23, I felt like I had hit the glass ceiling, if you will,
Yeah.
and had to do something else. So a CPA banked at our bank and would come and visit. And he would
Nice.
tell me like he had this opportunity to say, hey, why don't you get your licenses? Or not, I already had them, but why don't you start your own business? I can
Yeah.
help support you. And created like this really great relationship with the CPA that
That's
wanted to help
awesome.
his clients. And so Yeah, so I left the bank, started my own business at 23, and,
Wow.
the rest is history, right?
That is awesome. No, I think people need to hear that, not just from an individual perspective, but if they're thinking about starting their own business, that you can do it at any time, and having support helps, right? Having somebody
Oh, yeah.
there help guide you, like a CPA, can help you to realize, you don't need to wait until your 30s, 40s, and 50s to start your own business. In that regards.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of learning in my 20s.
I'm sure.
A lot of, I like to say he believed in me before I believed in me, but I was using his belief to be able to be like, "No, I can help people." And, that was, we went through 2001, we went through 2008, 2009, and lots of learning in the markets, and the cycles of business, if you
Yeah,
will.
definitely, definitely. So I wanna delve into, like, money loves you. How did you come to get to that point? I mean, you're very renowned in doing your financial literacy, so I'm sure that that played a role, but, you know, writing that book and kinda what you teach your clients, kinda how did that really come to fruition, and what can you tell us about the book without giving too much away? You want people to go ahead and take a look at it, but what are the things about the book too that you can share?
Yeah. So, just being in the industry and working with, hundreds of clients, going through
Yeah.
thousands of appointments, I've just done this for 25 years. And so what I've realized is there, there are people that do money really well. And then there's others that get stuck in regrets and shame and unknowing and
Yep,
like
and
feeling
that's
like something's
okay,
against them.
right? And that's okay to feel that way, there's nothing wrong with feeling that
Totally.
way. We
Yes,
just gotta get you out of
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, and it's because of their life experiences. Like, of course they feel this way because no one has ever taught them. And then the people that have taught them, potentially, it's coming from a very this is right, this is wrong, very rigid,
Yeah,
um, rule-based teaching. And I think we need to bring love into the subject of money. And it
yeah,
starts, yeah, and it really starts with loving ourselves, loving our experiences, knowing what brought us to here, although it may not be where you want it to be, it
very
serves
true.
you for a purpose, right? And
Yeah,
so it's like, how do we create peace with our past and actually use it as a power assist to make better choices moving forward?
very
Without
true.
the shame, without the
Yes.
guilt, without the regret, you got to let all that go.
Yeah, I agree. I think people need to realize that it's okay. You've made mistakes or you bought something that, oh, maybe I shouldn't have had bought. Okay, you've done it. Fine. How can we move on from that? How can we look at things and assure that maybe you can really afford it, but you just didn't realize that you could afford it? Those kinds of things. So, is there anything within the book that you really think is important for my listeners to, like, any insights or tips that you really start off with your clients or anybody reach out to with the financial literacy that's important for them to know?
Yeah, I mean, that money loves them.
Yes.
That
Yes, very
it's
true.
and yes, I know money is not a person, and it does, it's but it is like this personification of money that I think is so powerful that we get to decide how that energy exists in our lives. And if we come at it from a perspective, it's hard, I can't do this, I don't know what to do, that is what's going to manifest, as opposed to, oh, how can this be easy? How can I allow money to love me? How can I get resourced? How can I, like, get to the root causes of my money beliefs, which often we
Right.
don't even know, right?
You're right.
They're
Yeah.
subconscious, they're planted in there. So it's like, I like to say, it's like we have to dig into that subconscious, which is not very fun,
Right.
to find the root causes.
Yeah.
So, and then I think once we get to the root causes, then we're like, "Oh, I don't have to make this decision anymore because that was an old story and that's not who I am moving forward."
Right.
So,
Right,
like,
which is important.
yeah, I mean, for me, I would go on shopping sprees, and I would it's like retail therapy was
Yeah.
alive and
A
well.
lot of us do that, right?
And I was like, "Ah, why am I sabotaging essentially myself?" And when I dug down, it was this feeling of I was chasing my worthiness. I was trying to
Oh.
go buy something to make me feel better, to make me feel like I was good enough, or even
Yeah.
working too much, it's like, oh, I'm chasing this feeling, as opposed to now it's like I'm worthy just because, like we
Right.
all are. And so if we can start, like, I don't need to go buy these things where I get my quick hit anymore, even though I do
Right.
like nice things.
Right, right, and there's nothing wrong with buying nice things or buying things, but doing it from a place of, "Oh, I'm more worthy," or "I'm more of a person because of that," I think is
Right.
what needs to shift,
Yeah, or
in that
doing it
regards.
when you don't have the money, right?
Very
Like going
true.
into debt to
Very
do
true.
it, or like, so it again, it's all, there's nothing right or wrong. I think it's just that feeling
Yeah.
of owning your financial power, and then doing things that make sense for you based on your goals.
Right, and I think you bring up an important point, and you mentioned this originally too, is and I grew up, with accounting and money of it fits in this box, and some things do have to fit into a certain box because of rules and regulations, like, you
Yes.
can't right, there are laws and things like that, but how understand your money, money coming and going in your personal life, there doesn't necessarily need to be one size fits all. Right,
Correct.
and I think you bring up a valuable point that having some skill sets, learning certain things about yourself and also about money can then help you with however those choices come to be. Of course, as we say, within laws and regulations, especially for business,
Yeah.
we're not saying not to follow that, but and it leads me to, and I think it's in your book, or you talk about it, is throwing out your budget. So I think this is so interesting. Well, I think it's interesting because I talk about budgets and spending plans, and I talk about them in a way that helps to be guides, and they're not set in stone. When you set your budget, it can be adjusted, it can be modified depending on where you're at, and so I look at them more as a guide, and that not to cause yourself, like, stress over it, but I'm curious, like, I wanna know this whole anti-budget framework because I think it's important for people to know that if a budget or spending plan just doesn't work, there are other tools out there.
Yeah, and again, it's the way that you approach it. So I like the word guide. I track my money, but I don't
Right.
call it a budget just because, I think the energy of a budget can feel restricted, and
Agree.
a lot of
Yes.
women get shamed into a budget. And
Yeah.
so I feel like it's like we need to unleash that and
Yes.
actually get people excited to track their money, because what we
Right.
track improves. So track for sure, but the way that I like to think about it is, okay, am I on track? Like, is money flowing to the areas that are important to me, which
Okay.
is financial independence, is
Right.
so my hope is that what brings us joy is in that top bucket of how you allocate your money. So as opposed to saying, okay, my money needs to go to all these places, it's like, yes, that's going to happen, but do we have the financial independence as that goal? Do we have, if you are in debt, a plan to get out of debt, if that's what's important to you?
True.
Which in most
True.
cases it is. They just don't know how
Yes.
to go about it.
Right.
And
Right.
so the thought is let's just track this in a different way.
Okay.
That doesn't feel restricted, because your favorite things that bring you joy are at the top of the list.
Very true. Very true. And I think, that you're right. That word budget, connotates these things. And I actually just recently I'm a member of the Junior League of Lancaster. I'm a sustainer. I'm not active, but I just did a training for the women and talking about personal financial literacy. And I framed the budget spending plan area of saying, trying to do that because I don't, you know, what other words, it's kind of that I try to explain that a budget really is comparing what you're actually spending to what you think you're going to spend. And I don't, for some people that's just too stressful. And then the spending plan method really is a way to take, what everything that is coming in, and then how do you allocate it between your wants, your needs, your savings, and those goals. And I think these terms, they do connotate like, oh my God, and shame. And you're right. Some women in certain relationships, they have to follow a strict budget, and trying to break that. Sometimes you can't, but trying to make these terms or the process of these terms more free flowing and approachable.
Yeah, because what I have learned is that People want freedom, right? Like
Yes.
they want that sense of, "Oh,
Yes.
I have freedom with my money."
Right.
Here's the thing is in the discipline of putting money where you want it to go, spending it on what you want to spend it on, not happenstance, not like, oh, I went to Costco and I spent $500 and I don't even know what it was, right?
Right. Right. Paying more
But it's like,
attention.
no, like, yeah, with intention in that discipline, like that is where freedom is found.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but we don't think that. But once we have a plan and we follow it, it's like you build self-trust, you
Yeah.
build momentum, you see the results. That is freedom. That's like, "Oh, I am on track knowing that everything that is what I'm planning is happening."
And not necessarily just around money, right? Like the holistic approach isn't it's around money, but you've got to look at all the pieces in your life. And that's a piece of it, but like you said, if you're not able to get past certain things, those bad habits or habits you don't want to do with money are not necessarily going to be changed.
Yeah, I think it's like this new framework. Like if you have scars from budgeting,
Right?
it's
Yes.
maybe like, to reframe it and look at this new way of, okay, I get to spend my money the way that I want. Like that's empowering. And then, okay, these are all the things that are important to me: financial independence, being debt free, whatever that is, traveling, whatever it
Yeah.
is. And then make watching your money go to those areas and tracking it is actually
Yep.
can be really exciting.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think to get to that spot though too, you do have to have an understanding of what money is coming in and what money is going
Absolutely.
out. You need to take that time to really understand, okay, I know I've got monthly bills, mortgage and gas and grocery shopping. And then I've got all these other things like going out and going to the movies and going to dinner and things like that. And so having a better grasp on that, I think can then lead you to that tracking better of putting it into those buckets. And you brought up a little bit ago, with the idea of freedom, and you mentioned about your freedom number. And so I want to know kind
Yeah.
of what is that, and how do you determine that? Is there a specific formula, and how you came up with that?
Yeah. So, that's the number one question we get asked as advisors is how much money do I need to retire? How much money do I
Right,
need to be financially independent? And financially independence is just the number that says, hey, if you have $2 million, that's going to satisfy your lifestyle of living on 80,000 a year,
right,
calculating inflation for the rest of your life. So everyone has a different number.
right. Yes, there
It's
is not
based
one
on
number. Right.
yeah, which is why we need to know how much money we spend
Yeah.
on a monthly, yearly basis, because that actually tells you, hey, how much money do I need to live out the rest of my lives
Right.
without having to go to work, without
Right.
having to run a business, whatever that is for you. So the freedom number is essentially just a simple calculation that factors in inflation, factors in what you need for
Right.
every year to live on, and then multiplies it so it gives you that lump sum that you should be aiming for.
Okay. Okay. So it is a process, right? And like you said, there isn't one set number, but it is that number, like you said, to be able to live. If you're thinking retirement, what do I need to live every, off of and still have enough if there's, emergencies or, have that cash savings just in case.
Absolutely. And it depends. I mean, if we're retiring at 50 is very different number than you're retiring at 70.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
And sometimes it's a moving target. Like what you want at 40 may be different than what you want in your 50s. But it's just a simple way to think about, okay, this is the target I'm shooting for. And then you say, okay, what do back into it, right? Like what do
Right.
I need to save each month to get to that freedom number goal?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I know, my husband, he'll be with his job almost 30 years next summer. He'll be 55, and of course I'm going, maybe we retire, maybe we don't, what do we need to do? So we're actually in the conversation of we need to sit down with the financial planner and say, okay, like where do we need to be? Because I'm younger than him, not by much, but I am younger than him. So and I don't know if my dad will be 81 in like a few days, and I don't from this
Wow,
recording, and I don't even know if like he's ever going to retire. I mean, he's in the life insurance business, so like it's
very
not that
cool.
he's not working, but being self-employed is that feeling of am I ever going to like walk away or retire, and having that idea of maybe I can at some point. But yeah, we're having those conversations. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think the definition of retirement is gonna change over our,
Yeah,
as Gen Xers
I
kinda
think so.
get closer. Like, I yeah, longevity is improving. I think just the what we want I think we're all doing things we enjoy more than,
Yeah,
you know, uh, the industrial age of the older generation. So I think that will
very true.
evolve, but I think it's also really important to know, "Hey, I can at least make this decision."
Yes, yes,
If I am shooting for, this freedom number and I hit it, I can then decide, do I want to continue the work or do I not?
right. And I think it's hard too for us Gen Xers because I think we feel really sandwiched in the sense of our parents who are living longer for most of us, and then we have our kids. If we have kids, helping them along. And so, from a financial aspect too, there's some of that stress and strain because our parents, you were very blessed that they talked and sat down with you and taught you things about money. My parents, I learned by watching more so my grandmother really sat down and taught me stuff. She was really numbers was her thing. I think I get it from her.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah, she was amazing with that. If she gave you a birthday check and you didn't deposit it within a week, oh, she gave you hell for that. She was like, "You're messing up my bank and stuff." But I think
That's funny.
it's actually really funny. I think our generation, we're kind of feeling stuck there too because we learned more by observing than teaching, and I think that's where the financial literacy is important for really anybody, right? In that regards, but understanding those things and being able to teach the younger generation and talk about it and not be afraid to talk to the younger generation about our money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have 3 kids, so
I
we're
do.
constantly talking talking
Yeah.
about money, and I think too for Generation X, it's like we're seeing our parents get older,
Yeah.
we have the 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 mortality, if you will, we see that, and then
Yeah.
the kids are getting to a place where they're going to college, getting out on their own, like, did I equip them? Did I
Right.
as our generation gets older, I think it's like we do carry a big burden to make sure that we're doing the best we can, right? And
Right.
stewarding our own wealth while helping our parents and kids.
Yeah, and I think having this ability to talk about our finances and share that freedom, any other interesting tidbits from your book or as you talk to your clients that like when you talk to your clients kind of that you provide them or work with them to kind of see that light, see that light bulb go off and you've done your job to help them become more financially free.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of clients come to us usually in their 50s that where they're
Okay.
like they have to think about, oh, am I going to retire? What does this look
Right.
like? Kind of like what you and your husband are doing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's like, oh,
definitely.
I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
um and I think it's like there's this difference between financial freedom versus financial independence. So what I like to say is financial freedom happens the moment you start following a plan, the moment you have your freedom number. I call the anti-budget the values-based cash flow. So yes, you're tracking. It's just
But it's more of a cash flow of ins and outs than it is comparing to what you think you're gonna spend.
correct, because what I have found is that method, which although works, and I did it for a very disciplined period of time,
Yes.
it takes a lot of time.
It does, it does.
Yeah, and you have to have systems set up for it, and what I have found is some clients that are wired that way love it,
Yeah,
but the majority have a harder time keeping up on it. So, again, it's just whatever is gonna be best for
right.
how it works for you, and so it's but financial freedom can happen when we know we're on track to meet those goals and dreams,
Okay.
getting to that number. So where you don't have financial freedom is when you don't know what's going on with your finances. I mean, there's
Right.
so many people that just because they don't know, because they've never been taught, they avoid
Right.
it. And I find when we can come in and help facilitate those conversations, and teach them, get them set up on a plan, it's like, they can breathe, and it's actually not as bad as probably what they thought.
True,
It's
true.
just facing it.
Yeah,
And yeah, and that brings that sense of discipline, which then leads them to freedom,
okay.
which then puts them on their path to that financial independence.
Oh,
So
interesting. Okay.
sometimes when we just explain that to people, if they're feeling regret or, any
Yeah.
of those yucky fear, all of that,
Yeah.
it kind of puts them at ease. And I have a whole chapter about that in the book. So
Nice.
it's really, I think Money Loves You is meant for that, 40s, 50s,
Okay.
like it's that Gen X generation. Because what I find is sometimes early on, like my kids, like they need more black and white. They need more this,
Right.
here's how you do. Here's how it works. Where when you have life experiences, a little more wisdom, a little more mistakes behind
Right.
you, you're like, you have to kind of figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think, and I do think you're right. A lot of people just do put their head in the sand when it comes to finances, both personal and small business, right? I deal with a lot of small business owners and they hire me because they don't want to deal with it. And one of the philosophies that I say is, okay, I will deal with it, but you're going to come along for the ride because I'm trying to get them to see it and understand it because it's important. And I get some pushback over the years. I've had some pushback, but I also tell them I'm not your typical accountant in that regards. And nothing against accountants or CPAs. I've been in this profession almost 30 years and all, but when I was in the profession, coming into the profession, how we dealt with our clients and how we taught people is a lot different 30 years ago than it is now. And having to have those conversations. And I think it's important.
What a gift to your clients because
Thank you. I
yeah, like
know.
accountants in my experience, accountants like they're working they're working with a reactive approach,
Yeah.
right? So when you
Yeah.
can find an account that actually helps you be proactive with your business, with taxes, with all of that, like that's really powerful because then you can make those course corrections as opposed to the year being over and what can you
Right.
do now,
Right, and
right?
I'll be honest with you, I do it throughout the year, but I can't say all my clients are on board or pay attention still, right? You still have people when I get to tax season go, "Oh, I didn't know that," and then I very nicely, I'm like, "Well, I told you, I mentioned this at such and such a date," and because I'm trying to get them to be proactive with their money too, right? I
Yeah,
think
they
that's
need to be an
important.
active partner.
Yeah,
Absolutely. You can't do it for them. And that's the same for us. Like
right.
we are best guides for people that they want to help themselves, right?
Yeah,
They
right.
want that active relationship with us because that's when you really have a powerful relationship with
Yeah.
clients. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that comes with loving your money too in that regards of paying attention to it. Because by not paying attention to it, you may miss something or the whole thing about setting it and forgetting it, right? You put your bills on monthly things and forget it. And I always say that's fine, but you need to still check. Are you being charged the right amount? Do you have enough cash in the bank to cover that? And I kind of I do at the end of the month, I have this little spreadsheet all set up and I guess it is more tracking than it is budget. It is what do I have in my bank account? What do I know the bills that are coming up for the month? What is it that I might transfer to my savings? Rule of thumb, they say 20% of your pay or 3 to 6 months of emergency funds at a minimum. But, or goals, right? I put money aside and then I have like this bucket of money left over and I'm like, ooh, what can I do with that? Because my husband and I don't like to keep a lot of money in our checking account, one, because it gets no interest, like there's no benefit to it. And there doesn't, if our cash flow is working, there doesn't need to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Not that there is, but I'm just saying, like
Yeah.
that idea of tracking and paying attention.
Yeah, 2 things come up for that because I've had clients that have had theft out of their checking account because they keep 25, $50,000 and they don't even know that it happened. So, really important to look at your money every month. And then back to how you started our conversation, it's that energy. So, what you give energy to is going to give back. And so, the more you focus, the more you put that intentionality and energy into it,
I agree. I
that's where
agree.
that abundance mentality comes in. Like you'll be amazed at how much progress you can make.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that it is important because you're right. And that theft thing is huge, right? Especially since we're doing things so much more digitally now than when we were growing up, right? And paying attention. And even for like my kids are in their 20s, like their age group, paying attention to that because they do a lot more with, the PayPals and the Venmos and the transfers and stuff. And one, you need to make sure you're transferring it to the right person, right? You're paying a legitimate person, but two, paying attention because, my older son has had, I'd say, a couple of times has had fraudulent issues with his credit card. And he paid attention because I said to him, you need to review this every month, not just go and pay it. Take a look at your transactions because you never
Yeah.
know what could happen. So is there anything as you go about, like, huge financial literacy advocacy, which I absolutely love because I am also 100% like behind that. I try to help college age kids with taxes and understanding their money, and of course women empowerment. I do a lot of. So is there anything along your journey with this advocacy that you've come across story-wise that you're like, "Oh, I hadn't heard that until now," those stories that you didn't think could happen, that how do you approach teaching your clients maybe not to fall down that rabbit hole kind of a thing?
Looking at the whole picture.
Yeah,
So, yes, we've been talking a lot about tracking the inflows and outflows of your money, but
right.
I think it's also important that people understand how to track their net worth
Okay,
and look at their assets, not only their home if they have real estate, but also liquid assets, and then how do you start building those? And then at the same time, the liabilities are debts, the credit cards, the
right,
home mortgage, and be able to start lowering liabilities, increasing assets, which will build your
right.
net worth. And so, again, coming to, I think people, it may come easily to me and you because this is,
Right,
we've been
we
around
spent all
this.
these years doing it, yeah.
Yeah, but I recommend to our clients, we help a lot of our clients do this, is every 90 days tracking your net worth. So
Okay,
looking at all your investments, your assets, and your liabilities, just to make sure that you're making traction on that and you actually
yeah.
set little short 90-day goals.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
and I've worked with women business owners, and I have seen so many people like gain traction because now again they're putting energy into
Right,
looking at that and setting little goals, because sometimes when we plan for retirement or we're looking at this big freedom number, oh my gosh, I have to save $3 million, how am I ever going
right,
to do that?
right,
And then you
right,
give up, right?
right,
Tracking it allows you to create that little incremental growth. And
right.
I'm in my office and I have a folder down here that has every quarter since 2004, 2005.
Wow.
And it is incredible to go back and look at. And I'm so grateful that I
Right.
saved those first little, you know, we call them a financial empowerment snapshots.
Oh, I
It's like,
love that. I love that.
because sometimes people start with negative ones, right?
Right.
You have student loans, whatever the
Right.
case is.
Your liabilities outweigh what you're bringing in asset wise. And, your assets, your checking account, your investments, the liquid, when talking about liquid assets, it's really the stuff like your checking account that you can pull money out quicker than you could if it's in a CD or a stock market, in the stock market. And
Retirement accounts,
right,
yeah.
retirement account, things like that, and of course, the tax consequences on if you had to pull out of that stuff versus just pulling it out of your checking account regarding the liquid assets. But I think that's actually a really good tip to pay attention to what are your balances so that you can see are your assets growing at, I guess, a larger, higher rate than what your liability, your debt is, and my older son is dealing with his student loan debt now. He's graduated college and he's trying to make payments and he's got a job and he's realizing kind of he's doing a budget, but he's doing it more of just trying to see, okay, I know this is what's coming in, these are the expenses, and he's living at home with us right now, right? He's
Yeah.
not, because I'm like, if at any point you feel like you want to go to your own apartment or whatever, and he's just like, but the cost of it doesn't make sense for him
Hard for
as
these
he's
kids.
growing and building his net worth and his actual cash flow.
Yeah,
It's an interesting
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think the costs are a lot higher for these kids to get out on their own and
They
all of that,
are.
which
Yeah.
is why it is even more important to have this financial literacy and making decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Is there anything else you'd like to share? This has been really fabulous. I'm going to be picking up your book, Money Loves You. I will put in information in the podcast about where my listeners can find the books. But any other tips or insights that really you want my listeners or that stick in your head that is important for people to know?
I think the last piece of it is that accountability piece. So whether they're doing their money and have a buddy to
Right.
help them, whether they're doing it with an accountant or CPA, uh, or whether like we have a financial coaching service
Oh, okay.
because we didn't want to be just this advisor to high net worth families. Like we actually wanted to help people that want to be helped. And that's a huge need, I think, in America to help average,
Yeah.
hardworking families that may not have $1 million to invest
Right.
have the support of a financial coach. And so
Yeah.
that's that, third party that has the knowledge, has the experience, the licenses, all of that, but can put that coaching hat on and say, hey, meet you where you're at
Right. Right.
and give you like little every 90 days we work with our clients to actually give them digestible goals to work
Okay.
towards,
I
and
love it.
it's different for everyone. So it could be paying
Right.
off debt, or it could be increasing assets, it could be creating your estate plan and getting a will or a trust in
Right.
place. So but it's like I think that ongoing relationship is really valuable. And I think if you are serious about like wanting to get like your financial plan in place and all of that, and maybe don't want to go get all of the education out there,
Right. Right.
I think engaging, with someone that has that skill set is really important.
Yeah.
And
I
will just
agree.
help you get there a lot faster.
Yeah, I agree, and the whole idea that we talked about earlier about there is no shame in this, there's no judgment, right? Everybody has to understand or needs to learn because they may not have learned that. So where can we find you if people want to check out what you do or find your book, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So my book's on Amazon, Money Loves You. And then my website is M as in money,
Yes,
Carlson.
I love it.
Yeah, and that will point you to all the different things that I'm doing. And then my company's website is financialfreedomwmg.com.
Love it.
Um, yeah, and that will have just the services that we offer for clients out there. And we work all over the US.
I
So we're
love that. I love that. Julia, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, wonderful insight, more about understanding and loving our money. Cause I like I said, you're the third or fourth person that I've had on talking about that. And it's
love that.
really growing on me and the idea of that. So thank you so much for joining Your Financial Maven.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Follow, like, and subscribe to Your Financial Maven wherever you listen to your podcasts. And make sure that you leave your money stories or questions for me at www.yourfinancialmavenpodcast.com. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about money. The purpose of this podcast is to provide general information on the subjects discussed. It is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It is not meant to resolve your specific financial needs or situations. Please consult with your CPA, tax, or financial professionals. Your Financial Maven is hosted and produced by Samantha M. Besnoff, CPA, and Your Financial Maven, LLC. Editing is done by Chris Zarnock of KM Zen Creative. Music is written, composed, and performed by Daniel Shore.